Now, if you've been in the car audio game, then the term Type R from Alpine would certainly ring a bell. Well, that has evolved into the new R series. And today we've got our product expert, Dan Greenwood from Alpine, joining us to break down not only the R series, but what it means to car audio. This is CMA Connected, brought to you by Sirius XM, all about Alpine. And it starts now. What's going on, guys, and welcome to another CMA Connected, brought to you by Sirius XM. I'm your host, Ben Wu, and on the menu today, we're going to be talking about Alpine car audio, but more specifically, a brand, or a sub-brand, I should say, that means so much to so many, and that is, of course, the R series. Now, this is a special line that sits kind of intermediate within the Alpine catalog, but certainly has a lot of cool features and benefits that we're going to dig into today. Now, Dan, welcome to the show. What can we expect to chat about?
Thanks, Ben, and thanks again for having me. Yeah, we're talking about R series. So we took that characteristic of the old school Type R, which we've always called our fun and loud system, and we've kind of brought it up to what I think is even better now, which is still fun and loud, but also sounds really good, because something we're always chasing is really good sound quality, and the new R series kind of gives you everything. It's awesome.
Well, it looks like we'll be talking about the R series for its fun, loud, and now sound quality characteristics. But first, an opportunity for our partner Sirius XM to remind you why it's always a great add-on sale. And when we come back, we got Dan Greenwood from Alpine. Don't you dare go away.
Hi, Paul Truman here with Sirius XM. We reached out to some of our partners in the industry, and here's what they had to say.
I can't say more or enough about just what it means to have our unit working with Sirius XM. It's like we're there now.
The Sirius XM service is something consumers want, right? So it's Paul.
That allows a consumer to listen to either podcasts, entertainment, sports, all at their fingertips. It's all about engagement, and that's what Sirius XM provides.
Sirius XM is a huge component in a vehicle nowadays. Consumers expect that technology to be available both in our OEM system as well as the aftermarket upgrades that they're applying to their vehicle.
Alpine and Sirius XM, through our electronics, are able to offer the consumer on the aftermarket side Sirius XM 360L, which is an expanded platform for Sirius XM. And it's really been a beneficial relationship for us with Sirius XM.
As a dealer, just remember, we don't compete with anybody else. We are absolutely one of the best profitability accessories you can add to any head unit that is Sirius XM ready.
And welcome back to Connected. Again, we're with Dan Greenwood from Alpine. Today we're talking R series, legendary R series performance. Now, Dan, like everybody else who's a fan of car audio, that logo Type R, I mean, I remember that for sure, but this has evolved. So I'm curious to kind of pick your brain as to how it has evolved and what has Alpine done from a technology and product development standpoint to really evolve this brand. Let's start from the top, because speakers is obviously kind of, what R series is really known for. Let's get into the new R series speaker offering.
So something we've done to bring the R series up to modern day is we've actually improved a lot of the materials that the speakers are made out of, and kind of the newer modern technologies as far as high-res audio, for example. We've kind of implemented a lot of new technology into the new speakers. So like I was talking about, the R2 speakers are high-res certified. So something to help get that high-res certification is in the tweeter. So it's a whole new tweeter. It's actually a magnesium dome tweeter. For those of you that kind of concerned, saying, hey, man, I'm not a fan of the metal tweeters. They're a little too harsh. Give these a shot. They're actually super smooth, but still having that really nice fine detail that everybody wants. They perform exceptionally well. And as far as the mid driver and the woofer, those are actually made out of what's called a CFRP material, which is a carbon fiber reinforced polymer. So the dust cap and the cone are made out of that. And for those of you that remember the last generation of R series speakers that had a black cone, that was also CFRP. The new generation is now a gray cone, and the reason why is we actually don't dye the CFRP anymore. This is actually its natural color. We found that we actually had better performance, better rigidity on the cone without putting a dye in there. So that's why the color has changed. Another thing we're doing is we're offering two different versions of R series speakers. So we've always had the standard components, which are actually a composite basket. Now we're offering a Pro version of it, which is an aluminum basket. And the Pro version also has an optional three-way, which has a 3-inch mid included as well. And another difference between the Pro and the standard R is the crossover network. So your standard R series speakers are still going to have that small inline cap for the tweeter, very simplified install. For the Pro series, it is going to have an external passive crossover network, which is all self-contained in one box per side. Now, of course, you don't have to use those. You can always run them active. We definitely have some options there for those of you that want to even go above that and run them active with the DSP. They're ready for that as well. So, like I said before, the Pro Series woofers, they have a die-cast aluminum basket, so it does help with the rigidity and just the overall structure. It really helps reinforce the mid bass, so you are going to get a nice, good, deep impact out of these speakers. Kind of reminds me of the old original Type R speakers that have that huge magnet on them that can handle a lot of power. These kind of have that same kind of characteristic to them. We also have the Hammer Surround, something we've been known for quite a while now, which actually stands for high amplitude multi-roll, and it's actually kind of an accordion surround. And what that does is it helps keep the cone nice and level and straight as the speaker is moving in high excursion, so it doesn't wobble around, which can create distortion. It actually helps just helps reinforce and get the best mid-bass performance possible. And the tweeter, like I mentioned before, it's magnesium now, so it actually does have a little nicer detail on the higher end, but it still manages to be very smooth and very musical, with still being able to get a lot of volume out of it. And the new mount is actually has a nice swivel mount. So if you're flush mounting those somewhere, you can actually swivel the tweeter a little bit just to kind of help with your staging.
Well, Dan, I can see that the technology certainly has not slowed down. I love the surround, the cone materials, and everything that's being put forth. Now, what about a breakdown as far as options when it comes to the different series and sizes?
That's a great question. So we are covering a lot of the modern vehicles out there, offering, like I said, we have a 3-way speaker component now. We also do have the 2-way and coax speakers as well. They're going to come in 6.5 and 6x9 varieties. So yeah, so we have the 3-way component in the Pro Series. So you can get that in 2-way and 3-way. The only difference between the two is the passive crossover is going to have the extra channel for the mid, as well as the mid driver itself. Like I said, it's die-cast aluminum basket and a external passive crossover network. That's what's going to make the Pro Series the Pro Series. And for the standard series, which is going to be all the other the 6x9 component, 6.5 component, as well as the 6.5 and 6x9 coax speakers. Those are going to have the standard composite, the basket, just like we've had in the past. And they're going to have the same tweeter as the Pro Series, and they're going to also have that small inline cap on the tweeter, just a little crossover network, just to really help simplify the install. So here you have it. This is the R Series speaker lineup. This is just looking at the standard R Series. So as you can see, in the 6.5-inch size speakers, we do have the standard coax as well as a component. And then the 6x9, we have same thing, coax and component. And the only difference there is, like I said, they all have the same tweeter. It's just going to be the size of that woofer. And for the Pro Series, there's going to be 2 different models, the 2-way and the 3-way. They're all going to have 6.5-inch mid-bass drivers. But the only difference is going to be adding that 3-inch mid-range. And I will tell you, the sound quality of the 3-way is astonishing. It's a really impressive sounding set of speakers.
So, Dan, thanks for walking us through the R Series speakers. I do have a question, though. As far as system planning or making sure we're qualifying this product for the right customer, are these drivers meant or designed to run on deck power at all? Or do you really recommend this is more of like a step up whereby you are incorporating like amplifier power to the system?
That's a great question. With the R Series speakers, you're definitely going to want to run an amplifier because they actually do have a high power handling. That kind of goes with the whole fun and loud aspect of the speakers. Now, for those of you that are not wanting to do an amplifier, we also do have the S speakers, which actually can run pretty well off of deck power with a decent upgrade path. So if you decide to add an amplifier down the road, they'll handle that as well.
All right, Dan, moving on to some subwoofers because, of course, we love bass. And let's be honest, I remember the Type R subs. Those things were pounders. So I'm curious to see what Alpine has done with these new R series subwoofers.
Yeah, you said it, man. I remember the old Type R woofers being awesome back in the day, and guess what? They're still pretty awesome. So we still have big woofers that can handle a lot of power, have a lot of output, and pretty flexible too. We're offering a lot of different sizes of woofers now. So yeah, we have 12-inch, 10-inch, and 8-inch varieties of the R series woofers. All of them are going to come in either dual 2 or dual 4 ohm configurations. And the 10 and the 12, they can handle up to 750 watts RMS, or you're about 350 watts RMS on the 8. And of course, the hammer surround makes an appearance in the woofers as well. We've actually been using this on our woofers for a while now, just like our speakers. And same idea as the speakers. It's help better control for high excursion, which you definitely need in a subwoofer because especially the 10s and the 12s, they move a lot of air. And to help keep the new cone and dust cap in check, with it, it's now a Kevlar cone with a ceramic dust cap, which really helped with the weight and rigidity of the cone to actually help increase the amount of air we're moving out of the woofer and just a better control. So these things they get down and even louder than the older ones. And then a big upgrade, which is minor to some people, but big for installers, is the old rubber surround on the woofer is gone. Now it is what we call a twist lock ring. It is so much easier to install. And if you're adding a grill to these, which are optional, they actually mount super easy now. And that twist lock ring just snaps right into place. It's so much better. So yeah, like I mentioned before, we have 3 different sizes of the R series woofers. So we have the 12, the 10, and the 8, and dual 2, dual 4 ohm, and they can handle a lot of power.
Now, Dan, I don't know if it's just me, but I'm kind of a sucker for cool words like Kevlar and ceramic. So you had me at those 2 terms. I think those are brilliant technologies, especially at this price point for the performance that we expect here. I mean, just the overall aesthetic of these subwoofers is absolutely cool because, man, do they ever look beefy? So I can only imagine what they sound like. However, I will say this. I think there's a great market for big, powerful subwoofers, but you know what's going on right now? There's also a market for, more space limiting kind of solutions. Does the R series also have a solution when it comes to tight spaces and bass?
And you're absolutely correct. Very common vehicle out there. It's getting systems are these things called trucks, right? So they don't have much room. You pretty much got to put subs underneath the seat. I don't really think bed cuts are much of a thing these days. So a lot of guys want a decent amount of bass, but they don't have much room. So we wanted to take that legendary Type R performance of our woofers and slim it down a little bit. And we've came up with something pretty cool. So these are the R series shallow subs. They're going to be awesome. So they're only 3¼ inches of the mounting depth, and they still have 20 millimeters of X-Max, which is the same as the full size R series 10 and 12-inch woofers. So the idea here is we wanted to make sure that that performance of our full size woofer, we wanted to get as much of that output and sound quality and everything as possible in the most small amount of space as we can get. And I like to think we pretty much nailed it. If you haven't heard one of these, they're impressive. They're going to handle 600 watts RMS. They have a 4-inch voice coil. And of course, we're going to keep a neodymium magnet on this that really helps keep the size down and as flat as possible with a cast aluminum frame. But once again, we have an aluminum dust cap on this, so that cone is super strong and lightweight. And we also have this thing called cool mount, which I'm going to touch on a little bit later, but it's really unique to the R woofer. So the R series shallow subs, there's going to be 2 different sizes. We have the 12-inch and the 10-inch. And just like the full-size woofers, we are offering these in dual 2 and dual 4 ohm configurations. So for your single sub, multi-sub setups, and you need to get the certain ohm load right, we have you covered there. And there is an optional grill for the raw driver. So if you need a grill, we have those as well. If you remember earlier when I said I'll come back to cool mount, this is what it is. So it's a very unique design to the R series shallow woofer. And you can see this in the pre-made enclosure that we have here. What we're actually looking at is the magnet of the sub. This is the back side of the enclosure. And what's really unique is the magnet is exposed. So this actually has 2 different mounting flanges on the sub. So this can help keep the enclosure as shallow as possible. So, and also the whole aluminum basket of the sub is now a brace to that enclosure at the same time. So we're not only including getting better cooling because the magnet is now exposed to the to atmosphere, we're also getting better bracing in the enclosure, which will help reinforce everything. And we have now brought down the depth of that enclosure by at least 3/4 of an inch because we don't need to have the thickness of the material behind the woofer now the woofer is the edge of the enclosure. It's really unique to this. And if you guys are building your own enclosures, we do have the specs included so you can know what size hole you need to make in the enclosure in order to mount it this way. But for those of you that don't need that depth, you can mount it traditionally as well.
Dan, I'm going to take a second here because this deserves an extra comment. I've seen multiple different shallow subwoofers and shallow subwoofer enclosures come out. Everything from a bolt on the back to, give a little bit more rigidity, minimize overall height. This design, I'm going to say, is probably the most unique one that I've seen in the industry. Not only does it absolutely optimize in minimizing the height that you would need for that enclosure, but the very fact that you're using the actual driver as a reinforcement to the entire enclosure, I think this is brilliant. So I want to take a second and give a high five to the Alpine engineers that figured this one out. Not only is it a brilliant use of space, but also, using as a double purpose as a reinforcement brace to the enclosure itself for better performance.
Man, I couldn't agree more. It's I thought a really unique design when I first heard about it, and I'll tell you, when you hear these things in person, it performs because traditionally with a shallow woofer, you're kind of making a lot of sacrifices with performance and sound quality and everything. And something really unique about these subs when you hear one in person is it has all the output that you would expect from a full-size woofer. It's kind of way more than you would expect from a shallow, but also plays a lot lower than you'd expect. And this is going to be in a small sealed enclosure, which is what we are recommending for these subs when you run them. If you're going to build an enclosure, they really like to be in a small sealed enclosure, which is perfect for the kind of environment where we expect you to be installing them.
Now, I think, Dan, we've done a little sneak peek of the one style of enclosure that's available, but don't worry, guys. When it comes to the R series, there are multiple enclosure solutions that Alpine has come up with. Dan, please walk us through the different enclosure styles for different purposes.
Yeah, so you guys saw a little peek at the shallow sub enclosure. We definitely have other options as well. So starting here on the top left of the screen, this is the Halo enclosure. We came out with these a few years back, but we have updated them to the R2 woofer. So that's going to be a ported enclosure. It's also not very big. Something that's really cool about Alpine subs is they don't need much volume of airspace if you're doing sealed or ported. And another really unique feature on the Halo enclosure is you can buy them as a single, or you can buy two of them with the linking kit and link them together and have two woofers as one enclosure. And we do have amplifier options that work perfectly for power matching for single and dual woofers as well. Now, kind of keeping that going for all the trucks out there, a couple years back, just on the bottom left of your screen, that's the truck enclosure. So you're seeing like a front view and then a bottom view of the name of it. It's actually two enclosures with an amp rack in the middle, and the entire enclosure can slide in and out. So you can accommodate the width of whatever truck you're working on. So as long as the truck has a relatively flat floor underneath the back seat, there's a good chance this enclosure is going to fit. And it comes with two 8-inch R series woofers, both imported enclosures. And together they'll handle about the 750 watt amplifier is perfect. They're actually 350 watt RMS woofers. So 700 watts RMS power handling at 2 ohm. So it's 4 ohm per enclosure. And it's a great solution, and it looks awesome, and there's no custom fab needed whatsoever. And then, and for those that want even more output and don't have much space, look no further than the R Series Shallow. So this is another view of the enclosure we're looking at. You can see the bottom that actually does come with the grill, and the sub is inset into the enclosure. So it is not protruding beyond the enclosure. So when you put the mounting feet on, it actually has a lot of room to breathe. And those mounting feet are actually stackable. So you can actually stack it up or down, or you can put the mounting feet on the other side of the enclosure and have the sub firing up if that works better in your application. So it's very flexible, depending on whatever kind of vehicle you're working on. So as far as the models for the Halo enclosures, we do offer those in 12-inch and 10-inch varieties. They're all going to be set up for 2 ohm per enclosure. So do keep that in mind when you're picking out your amplifier. The R2 A75M is perfect for one of these. And if you want to run 2 of them, the R2 A150M is actually a 1500 watt at 1 ohm stable amplifier, which is perfect for driving 2. And then, of course, you do have the linking kit there for if you're running 2 of them. As far as the shallow subs, those come in either 10-inch or 12-inch varieties. As far as the enclosure goes, they are set up for 2 ohm. So they're going to have dual 4 ohm woofers in the box. They are going to come with the grill, and they're going to handle 600 watts RMS. So the other thing that's really cool is the S2A60M, for example, is actually a really nice companion to this because it's 600 watts at 2 ohm. If you're running 2 of them, we actually have another amplifier in the S2 lineup that is 1200 watts at 1 ohm, which is perfect for these. Or you can run the R2A150M. It'll totally handle it, no problem. But a really cool thing is this whole enclosure, and it doesn't matter if it's the 10 or the 12, is only 5¼ inches high externally. That's without the mounting feet, but the entire enclosure is only 5¼ inches. And that, keep in mind, that sub and grill are inset into the enclosure, so it does not protrude beyond that 5¼ inches. So it's an incredible shallow depth for the amount of bass output you're getting out of these. And last but not least is the truck sub enclosure. So we have like I said, it's 2 8-inch R series woofers. Together, it's 2 ohm load. So it's 4 ohm per enclosure because there are 2 enclosures included. And the 750 watt RMS of the R2A 75M is perfect for these, and it does fit on that amp rack really nice. Now, if those are guys that are curious, the ports on this are actually tuned to 36 hertz, and it actually is side ports, so they actually fire off the back doors. It actually helps with the cabin gain of the truck. It actually works exceptionally well. And a really cool little pro tip for you guys that are working on a Jeep Gladiator. This does fit. You just take the amp rack out and slide the enclosures all the way together, and you can still put that gray mounting plate on the front and bolt them together, and it fits underneath the back seat of a Gladiator perfectly.
And last but not least, of course, this would not be a complete conversation if we didn't talk about amplifiers. Type R amps, now R series amps. I'd like to see how Alpine has broken it out and what improvements have they made to streamline and make these new R series amplifiers better than ever before.
Yeah, so to complete the whole series lineup is amplifiers. So we have R series amps, and kind of like I've been talking about before, they're all designed to match and work perfectly with the R series speakers and subwoofers. So yeah, what's going to make the R series amps unique? First off, they're high-res certified. So there's going to be a couple different models that have the high-res certification. That's in the 4-channel, and we also do have the older 6-channel still current. Those actually have a frequency response of 20 hertz up to 40K. So for those of you that are wanting high fidelity out of these amplifiers, as well as a good power output, we got you covered there. And we also have a pretty full lineup. So we have a 4-channel amp that is 100 watts by 4. That's perfectly matched for all the R series speakers, components, and coax speakers. And we also do have 2 mono amps. One of that I've been talking about is the 750 watt, the R2A75M. That is the exact same size as the 4-channel. So if you're doing a 4-channel mono install and you like to have matching amps, those 2 are the exact same size, exact same kind of chassis. The R2A 150M is going to be a little larger because it is a large monoblock amplifier, and that's going to be 1500 watts at 1 ohm. You get 1200 watts at 2 ohm. So depending on what kind of setup you're doing, if you're building enclosure for 2 R shallow woofers and you're running dual 2 ohms and you're going to have a 2 ohm load total, this amp would also be perfect for that as well. And another big improvement we've made on these amps, opposed to the older ones, is it's a lot smaller. So the footprint is shrunk down a lot. We have a slide here in a second. I'll show you how much it's shrunk down. And as well as a lot of other improvements. So the controls are now on the top of the amplifier underneath the mounting plate. And that mounting plate, which has the Alpine logo, is actually rotatable. So you can rotate it every 90 degrees. So if you're mounting the amp sideways or upside down, you can just mount the plate right side up where the logo is right side up. You don't have to put on a sticker or anything like that. And it also makes the controls a lot easier to access in those more obscure locations, like on the back wall of a truck or underneath the front seat of a car, which is pretty common places for amp installs these days. Another big thing we've improved is you no longer have to install little mounting feet to the amplifier. So they're now just built-in mounting holes right into the chassis of the amp, so you can just screw it down directly. It really helps simplify the install. One last thing I want to touch on is all the controls are now on the single side. So they're all on what I call the bottom of the amplifier. So you don't have to have RCA cables on the top and kind of take up even more space. Having everything on the bottom does simplify everything. So that is a big improvement as well. So yeah, just like I just mentioned before, the size of the amplifier has shrunk down a lot. You can kind of get an idea right here. So we used to have the RA60F and the RA75M. Those are now the R2A60F and R2A75M. Same power output, same a lot of the same specs as before, but in a much smaller chassis with a much better layout as far as connections and all controls and everything as well. So as far as the models of the R2 amplifiers, we have the, like I said, we have the R2 60F, this 4-channel. 75M is the monoblock, which is 750 watts at 2 ohm. Do keep in mind that this model is not 1 ohm stable; it's just 2 ohm stable. But that'll give you your full power output. It'll be at 2 ohm. And then the R2 150M, that is going to be your large mono 1 ohm stable amplifier. So that's how you get the full 1500 watts. Now we still have from the older model the RA90S. That is the 6-channel amp. That is continuing on. It is still a current amplifier. So that's a really cool amp because it actually has staggered power. So that is 75 watts by 4 and 150 by 2. What's really nice about this amp is you can actually run active crossovers on the amplifier without a DSP. So really good pairing is that amplifier with the R2 3-way components. It actually works exceptionally well.
Again, Dan, thanks so much for coming in and kind of working with us to talk about the entire range that the R series now offers. Now, I'd like to hear from your thoughts, the feedback that you've been getting from dealers, the overall output, the sound signature. How can we sum this up for dealers tuning in to really better understanding of what the final output of this R series actually does?
That's a great question. So, kind of two things to note that I've really noticed as far as feedback from the all new R series is one is the sound quality. It still has they're fun and loud like it should be, but a lot of people, including myself, have really felt like the new R series components have really stepped up in the quality of sound. It's remarkable how accurate they are and how pleasant they are to listen to. But those days that you just want to crank it to 11, they can still do that and not break up. They totally keep their composure. They're a really awesome sounding set of speakers. And then of course the subs have always been the subs. They pound, they get loud, they're clean, they're very musical. But the shallow woofers are really, really shocking how much output they have, considering how small they are. And how low they can play. It's really keeps up. So for like I said, guys with trucks or even SUVs where they don't want to have anything in the back you can put onto the floor, that's another really cool option. It's just really cool to keep that heritage of the fun and loud, but also really kind of bringing it into the modern days where a lot of people are really wanting better sound quality as well, especially with the high-res certification. This is kind of the first R series we've had that kind of checks all the boxes. It's really awesome.
That was Alpine's Dan Greenwood joining us, giving us a full detailed breakout of the new R series from Alpine. Now, if you want to find out any more information or specs on any of the products covered on today's show, I do encourage you to head over to the official website. We'll put it on the screen right now. And if you happen to be a dealer from Canada tuning in and you're wanting more information or perhaps to be the new Alpine dealer, please connect with the folks at Gentech International as they are the distribution partner for Alpine north of the border. Now, my takeaway, listen, R series, Type R, however you want to call it, this is a series that has a history to perform. I think it is very clear from Dan's presentation today that not only has Alpine listened to the customers, little things like the feet on the amplifiers or the overall height of the speakers so they can fit more, or power handling, or the size of the amplifiers, it is clear beyond a shadow of a doubt that Alpine has implemented such feedback into improving their entire line. Moreover, I think they've also come up with incredible solutions, whether it's the 3-way component set or the under-seat subwoofers with 8-inch drivers, for the application like a Gladiator, like Dan mentioned. This is a go-to line for customers seeking advanced performance from a brand that they recognize in a new modern setting, and that is tight spaces, but we still want the bass. So heads up, check out that shallow subwoofer. I think it's mind-blowing how they can get it to perform at such a small enclosure, and everything else, well, it's R series. That's it for this CMA Connected, brought to you by Sirius XM. I'm your host, Ben Wu. Until next time, we connect.